Insperity presents the Small Business Advocate Show with Jim Blasingame, brought to you by FedEx, CareerBuilder.com, and Palo Alto Software. This is a copyrighted production of Small Business Network, Inc., all rights reserved.
Every night I hope and pray a dream lover will come my way.
That's Bobby Darin bringing us back. 17 till. I'm Jim Blasingame. Thank you very much for hanging out with me. I'm having a great time here, folks, because I'm getting to talk to one of my heroes, someone I consider to be, he's clearly a witness to a century. And I consider him, as many others do, to be a national treasure. Austin Kiplinger just celebrated his 94th birthday, and tomorrow is the 89th birthday of the Kiplinger Letter, publication and an empire, basically, a publishing empire that his father founded back in the 20s. Mr. Kiplinger, welcome back to the show. Thanks again for hanging out with us.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
It's good to have you back. Let's talk a little politics, and I love hearing you talk about current politics from the perspective of someone who knows history, who's lived through a lot of times. There's a lot of acrimony in politics this year, and a lot of people say that it's the worst, but there was a time when a vice president killed the Secretary of Treasury, right?
You're right, and I'm glad you mentioned that.
I do.
I've been through several of these down periods in political mood, and I'll tell you, this isn't worse. It's different. It is different because the tone is a little bit different. But, Washington doesn't make decisions. The country makes decisions, and that's the truth, and I have a hard time convincing a lot of people of that, because I write from Washington, and everything has the Washington dateline. Mm-hmm. But, this thing we call gridlock, it's very unpopular in the press, and a lot of the double-dome thinkers, point the fingers and shake their heads at these terrible political leaders who are in gridlock. Well, let me tell you, they are listening to their constituents, mm-hmm. and on both sides. And they're saying, don't let them do it to you. You stick in there.
Right.
Fight till the last.
But do you not? Does it not seem to you? And I would like your perspective on this. Have you ever seen a time when America was more black and white, more polarized, without as many shades of gray?
Yes, I have. Yes, I have.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that.
In the New Deal days, you could hardly go to certain parties or certain dinner parties and mention the name of Franklin Roosevelt, somebody would knock you down.
Uh-huh.
Now, we were writing in those days, and my father was reminding our business friends that they had to cope with Franklin Roosevelt and the New Deal and more regulation and more central control because that was going to win. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't popular, but we were calling it the way we saw it. Mm-hmm. And we do that frequently, as you well know. We're not here to be popular. We're here to tell you what we think is going to happen. No, and during the Joe McCarthy era, things were bitter, mm-hmm. and people have forgotten all about that.
Yeah, and they were almost didn't know who to trust. But back to the New Deal days, Franklin Roosevelt ushered in an era of statism, an era where so many of the things that he initiated put government more in our lives.
Exactly.
Do you see that kind of thing happening? With a lot of people have compared Obama to that kind of activity. What do you think?
Well, listen, the course has already been set. We're on that course, and the majority of people are Democrats. And for a Republican to win, he would have to win back a lot of the middle ground, right, and take away a lot of the Democrats, which it does not look as though Romney
it would take a Reagan-esque
doing.
Type of person to do that, wouldn't it?
That's correct. And I don't think we're in that mood or in that state of mind right now. And it would seem to me that the incumbent is in the lead and probably going to hold on.
What in terms of, Jefferson warned us, Mr. Kiplinger, 200 plus years ago. He warned us that when more Americans were taking from the government than were contributing to the government, that our country was probably not going to last long after that. Aren't we getting very close to that right now?
Well, I think we're tilting, and I think that's the big issue. And I think whether Romney wins or not, that the issues that have been raised in this campaign are really very important. and
For
they'll
example,
continue.
what would you say?
Well, the question of the dominance of big government in our lives. You know, one of our problems in the world today, and this is worldwide, this is global, is bigness of institutions. It's bigness in some corporations. You know, some corporations find they have levels and levels and levels, and so they can't make fast decisions. Well, government gets the same way. You get into a deadlock, and nobody can make a decision. And I think it's endemic in the question of bigness of all kinds. Think how big the world is.
Well, and look what it's costing us.
We've got 7 billion people, and at the same rate of increase in population, we're going to have 14 or 15 billion in another 40 years. That's too many people.
Are current governments and are our current resources going to be able to handle that?
Well, I'll tell you, nature has a way of taking care of this one way or another, and I don't know how it's going to happen. It's not going to necessarily be volcanoes and tornadoes and hurricanes. But when things get too far out of hand, they correct themselves, and sometimes in a very disastrous way.
Right.
But
so what should we do about it? Is this something we should start getting control of?
Of course, if we're sensible and calm and quiet and all of that sort of thing, we'll get together and reason together. But I'll tell you, democracy always is late in making decisions. We know that.
Yeah.
We don't act in advance of a
because of our interest for personal rights.
No, it's the nature of government, of democracy. You've got to wait till you get a majority, and then the majority's got to wait till it feels sure about something.
Yeah.
And that takes a little time.
And then it's almost too late. Hold on to that thought. Mr. Austin Kiplinger, ladies and gentlemen, celebrating his 94th birthday. One of my favorite people on the planet, and also the 89th anniversary of the Kiplinger letter. That's an institution in America. He and I will be right back. We're going to talk a little foreign policy after these messages. Stay with us.
Insperity presents the Small Business Advocate Show with Jim Blasingame, brought to you by FedEx, CareerBuilder.com, and Palo Alto Software. This is a copyrighted production of Small Business Network, Inc., intended for the private use of our audience. Except as otherwise provided by copyright law, all other copying, redistribution, or publication without prior written consent is prohibited. All rights reserved.